Let me tell you why you're failing. It's not because you're not talented. It's not because you don't have opportunities. It's not even because you're not working hard enough. You're failing because you don't trust the process. Everyone wants the results. The money, the body, the business, the respect, the freedom. But nobody wants the process. Nobody wants the years of grinding in darkness. Nobody wants the months of doing the work when nothing visible is happening. Nobody wants the daily discipline when there's no immediate reward. They want the penthouse. They don't want the 10,000 hours in the basement. They want the championship. They don't want the 5 a.m. training sessions when their body's screaming at them to quit. They want the empire. They don't want the years of failures, setbacks, and invisible progress. And that's why everyone's broke. Everyone's average. Everyone's stuck. Because success isn't about one big move. It's about 10,000 small moves that compound over time. It's about trusting that the work you're doing today will pay off tomorrow, next month, next year, even when you can't see the evidence yet. I'm going to tell you the truth about trusting the process, not the motivational poster version, the real, brutal, uncomfortable truth. Because I almost quit multiple times. I almost walked away from everything because I couldn't see the results fast enough. And if I had, you wouldn't be listening to me right now. Because everything I have came from trusting a process that looked like it wasn't working for years. Stay with me. This is going to challenge everything you think about success. Let me take you back to a version of Andrew Tate nobody talks about. The impatient one, the frustrated, the one who wanted everything yesterday. I was in my early 20s, training every day, working on business ideas, grinding relentlessly, and seeing nothing visible anyway. My bank account wasn't growing, my status wasn't changing, my life didn't look any different than it did 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago. And I was angry about it. I'd look at other people my age who seemed to be succeeding faster, getting opportunities I wasn't getting, making money I wasn't making, living lives that looked nothing like mine. And I'd think, what am I doing wrong? Why isn't this working? How long am I supposed to keep doing this before something happened? The worst part wasn't the lack of results. It was the lack of evidence that results were even coming. When you're in the gym and you're not seeing gains, at least you can tell yourself you're getting stronger, even if you can't see it yet. There's a biological process you trust. But when you're building a business and nothing's working, when you're developing skills and nobody's recognizing them, when you're putting in the hours and your life looks exactly the same, that's when the doubt creeps in. I remember sitting in this tiny apartment, looking at my expenses versus my income, doing the math on how long I could keep this up before I'd be forced to quit and get a real job. And that thought terrified me, not because I was afraid of work, but because I was afraid that everyone who doubted me would be proven right. That all of this, the training, the sacrifice, the grinding was just delusion dressed up as determination. There was a specific night, I'd been working on a business idea for months, put everything I had into it, time, money, energy, and it failed, just completely failed. I was sitting there looking at the wreckage of this thing I'd built, and I had to make a choice. Keep going or give up, and I didn't know which one was the smart choice. See, that's what nobody tells you about trusting the process. Sometimes you don't know if you're being patient or if you're being stupid. Sometimes you don't know if you're persevering or if you're just refusing to accept reality. The line between determination and delusion is thin, and you don't know which side you're on until after the fact. I wanted to quit. I'm not gonna lie to you. The thought crossed my mind more than once. Maybe they're right. Maybe I should just get a regular job. Maybe this dream is unrealistic. Maybe I'm wasting my time. Every person who'd ever doubted me was whispering in my head. Every realistic person who told me to have a backup plan. Every skeptic who said I was chasing something impossible. And in that moment, they almost won. But then I asked myself a question that changed everything. If I quit now, where will I be in 5 years? And the answer was clear. Exactly where I didn't want to be. Working a job I hated. Living a life I didn't choose. Regretting that I didn't push through. So I made a decision. I decided to trust the process for one more day, just one more day, and then I'd make that decision again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day. I didn't trust that it would work. I trusted that I'd regret it if I didn't try. That's what kept me going in the early years. Not faith, not certainty, just the knowledge that I'd hate myself if I quit. Now let me expose the lie that almost destroyed my patience. The lie of overnight success. You see it everywhere. Social media has made it worse. Everyone's showing you their highlight reel, the moment they made it, the day everything changed. The influencer who went from 0 to millions. The athlete who came out of nowhere to win the championship. The entrepreneur who built a $1 billion company overnight. And you think, why is it taking me so long? Why am I still grinding while they're already winning? What do they have that I don't have? Here's what they're not showing you. The 10 years before, the overnight success. Every person you see winning has a backstory you don't see. Years of invisible work, failures nobody witnessed, grinding nobody applauded. They show you the mansion. They don't show you the 10,000 hours in the basement. They show you the championship belt. They don't show you the training sessions at 5 a.m. when nobody was watching. They show you the business success. They don't show you the 3 failed businesses before this one worked. The overnight success is a marketing story. It's not reality. I know this because I became one of those overnight successes. People look at me now and think it happened fast. They see the current version and they don't know about the years before. They don't know about the kickboxing matches I won when nobody cared, the businesses I started that nobody noticed, the skills I developed in complete obscurity. They see me now and they think it was luck or natural talent or the right connections. It wasn't. It was years of trusting a process that looked like it wasn't working. Let me give you a real example. Kickboxing. People see me as a world champion. They see the titles. They think it happened naturally because I'm athletic or talented. Here's what they don't see. I started training when I was young. Years of practice, thousands of hours in the gym, hundreds of rounds in the ring, losses nobody remembers, training sessions where I got destroyed by better fighters. There were years where I was good but not great, where I was winning matches but not championships, where I was putting in championship level work but getting regional level results. And during those years, nobody cared. Nobody was watching. Nobody thought I'd become what I became. I could have quit. I could have said, I've been doing this for years and I'm not a world champion yet. Maybe this isn't for me. But I didn't. I trusted that the work was accumulating even when the results weren't showing. And then one day, it all clicked. The years of training compounded. The skills I developed started working together. The experience I'd accumulated gave me an advantage. And suddenly I was winning championships. Overnight success. Except it wasn't overnight. It was 10 years in the making. This pattern repeated in everything I did. Business, wealth building, everything. Years of invisible accumulation. Then a moment where it all compounded and became visible. But social media doesn't show you that. It shows you the moment, not the years before the moment. And that's destroying your patience. That's making you think you're behind. That's making you want to quit because you've been working for 6 months and you're not a millionaire yet. 6 months? I worked for years before I saw real results. And that's normal. That's how it works for everyone who actually succeeds. The people selling you get rich quick are lying to you. The people showing you their overnight success are lying to you. Not maliciously, but they're lying by omission. They're not showing you the full story. And you're comparing your chapter 1 to their chapter 20. You're comparing your process to their results. And that comparison is killing your patience. Stop comparing. Start trusting. Trust that if you do the work, the results will compound. Maybe not today, maybe not this month, but eventually, that's what the process is. Delayed gratification, invisible accumulation, faith in compound growth. So let's get brutally honest about what trusting the process actually means. Because it's not some abstract philosophical concept, it's concrete, it's daily, it's uncomfortable. The process is waking up at 5 a.m. when you don't want to because you committed to a routine. The process is training when you're tired because training is what you do, not something you do when you feel like it. The process is working on your business for the 1,000th day in a row when you haven't made $1 yet. The process is staying disciplined when everyone around you is comfortable and you're the only one running. The process is doing it anyway. That's the key phrase. Doing it anyway. Anyway when you don't feel like it. Anyway when you don't see results. Anyway when people think you're wasting your time. Anyway when logic says it's not working. Anyway, when every cell in your body wants to quit, doing it anyway, that's the process. It's not pretty, it's not inspirational, it's just relentless forward motion, even when you can't see where you're going. Let me give you a real example from my life. There was a period where I was building a business, digital business, and for months, I was putting in 12-hour days and seeing almost no return. I'd work all day, check the numbers, and see basically maybe a few dollars. Not enough to justify the time investment. Not enough to prove that this was working. And every day, I had to make the choice. Keep going. Most people would have quit because most people need immediate feedback. They need to see results quickly or they lose faith. But I'd learned something by this point. Results lag behind effort. There's always a delay. You plant the seed today, you water it tomorrow. You don't see the plant for weeks, but that doesn't mean nothing's happening. Underground, invisible to you, the seed is germinating, roots are growing, the foundation is being built, and one day the plant breaks through the soil, and then it grows fast because the foundation was already built underground where you couldn't see it. That's how everything works. Business, fitness, skills, wealth, relationships. You do the work today, the results show up later, sometimes much later. But most people quit during the underground phase. They quit when the seed is germinating but hasn't broken through yet. They quit one day before the breakthrough, and they never know how close they were. I almost did that multiple times. Almost quit right before the breakthrough. Almost walked away from things that eventually made me millions because I couldn't see the progress yet. Thank God I didn't. Because looking back now, I can see exactly when the foundation was being built. I can see the underground phase. I can see how every day of nothing happening was actually everything happening, just invisible. Here's what the process looked like day to day. Train every single morning. Whether I felt like it or not, whether I was sore or not, whether I saw physical results or not, train. Because that's what disciplined men do. Work on the business, on the skills, on whatever I was building. Hours and hours of focused work. Most of it producing no immediate results, but building capacity, building knowledge, building the foundation. Evening, study, learn, improve, consume information that made me sharper, read books, watch content from people ahead of me, analyze what worked and what didn't, reflect, review the day, plan tomorrow, stay focused on the process, not the results, repeat every day for years. No days off, no I'll do it tomorrow, no excuses, just the process. And here's what made it hard. Nobody was cheering, nobody was watching, nobody cared. My family thought I was wasting my time. My friends were living normal lives and thought I was obsessed. Society was telling me to be realistic. I had no external validation, no proof that this was working, no evidence that I wasn't just deluding myself, just a process and my commitment to it. That's what trusting the process actually is. It's not blindly hoping things will work out. It's committing to the daily actions that compound over time, even when you can't see the compound effect yet. It's doing the work when there's no audience, staying disciplined when there's no reward, pushing forward when there's no proof it's working. That's the process, and 99% of people can't do it. They need immediate feedback, they need validation, they need to see results quickly or they lose faith. And that's why 99% of people don't succeed. Because success requires you to work in the dark, trusting that eventually there will be light. Let me take you to the darkest period. The time when trusting the process felt like the biggest lie I'd ever told myself. I was about 27 years old. I'd been grinding for years, multiple businesses attempted, training relentlessly, working harder than everyone I knew, and I was still broke, not building wealth slowly, broke, actually broke. Looking at my bank account and feeling that pit in my stomach broke. I'd made a promise to myself years earlier that I'd be rich by 25, self-made, independent, free. I was 27 and I was further from that goal than I'd been at 23. That's when the real doubt, not the surface level doubt, the deep existential doubt. Am I delusional? Have I wasted years of my life chasing something impossible? Am I just too stupid to realize I'm failing? Those thoughts kept me up at night. Real, legitimate questions about whether I was trusting a process or just refusing to accept reality. My family was concerned, not in a mean way. They genuinely worried about me, thought I should get a stable job, thought I was sacrificing my 20s for a dream that might never materialize. And they weren't wrong to worry. From the outside, it looked like I was failing. Friends from school had jobs, stability, relationships, normal lives, and I was still grinding in obscurity, broke, with nothing to show for the years of work. I remember this one family dinner, Christmas or something, everyone asking what I was doing with my life. And I had to explain again that I was building businesses, training, working towards something, and I could see it in their eyes. They didn't believe me. They thought I was making excuses. They thought I was afraid of real work, so I was hiding behind entrepreneurship. That hurt more than being broke. That pity mixed with disappointment. I left that dinner and I sat in my car and I had a moment, a real dark moment. What if they're right? What if I'm just afraid of normal life? What if I'm using this process as an excuse to avoid facing the fact that I'm not special? That's the thought that almost broke me. Not that I might fail, but that I might be lying to myself about why I was failing. There were nights I'd lay awake doing the math. How much longer could I keep this up? How long before I'd have to admit defeat and get a regular job? And the scariest part, I didn't know if continuing was brave or stupid. Was I persevering through adversity? Or was I too prideful to admit I was wrong? I didn't know. And that uncertainty was torture. Because when you're in the process, you don't have perspective. You can't see the full picture. You You don't know if you're in the underground phase before the breakthrough or if you're just digging a hole that goes nowhere. You don't know. And that's the brutal truth about trusting the process that nobody talks about. Sometimes you're trusting blindly. Sometimes you have no idea if you're one day away from success or one day leading up to it. I had moments where I wanted to quit. Real moments. Not just passing thoughts. Actual consideration of giving up. And you know what stopped me? Not faith, not certainty, not even hope. It was stubbornness. Pure, irrational stubbornness. I refused to let them be right. I refused to give anyone the satisfaction of saying, I told you so. I refused to prove the doubters correct. Was that healthy? Maybe not. But it kept me going. I'd think, if I quit now, every person who doubted me wins. Every skeptic gets validated. Every comfortable person gets to feel superior. And I'd rather die than give them that. So I kept going. Not because I believed in the process, but because I refused to be the guy who quit. Looking back, I can see that this was my darkest period, but also my most important period. Because this is where most people break. This is where most dreams die. Not in the beginning when you're excited, not at the end when you're winning, but in the middle, in the dark period. When you've invested too much to quit comfortably, but you haven't seen enough results to continue confidently, that's where the real test happens. And most people fail it. They quit in the dark period, right before the breakthrough, one day before everything changes. And they never know how close they were. I almost did that. Almost quit in the dark period. Almost walked away from everything that eventually made me who I am today. Thank God for my stubbornness. Thank God I was too proud to quit. Because that pride, that refusal to give anyone the satisfaction of being right about me, that's what carried me through the dark period. And on the other side of that darkness, everything I have now. Here's what I didn't understand during the dark period. Progress was happening. I just couldn't see it. This is the concept that changed everything for me once I finally understood it. Invisible accumulation. Everything compounds. Skills, knowledge, experience, connections, reputation, all of it accumulates invisibly until it reaches a critical mass. And then it becomes visible all at once. Let me explain this with math, because math doesn't lie. If you improve 1% every day, you're not 365% better at the end of the year. You're 37 times better. That's compound growth. But here's the catch. You don't see that growth daily. Each day, 1% looks like nothing, feels like nothing. You can't measure it. For months, it looks like nothing's happening. You're putting in the work and you're technically getting better, but the results aren't visible yet. And then, suddenly, you hit the tipping point. The compound effect kicks in, and growth becomes exponential. This is why most people quit. They're working through the flat part of the exponential curve, the part where it looks linear, where effort and results seem disconnected. But they quit right before the curve goes vertical, right before years of invisible accumulation become visible success. I've seen this pattern in everything I've done. Kickboxing, years of training with slow improvement, then suddenly I'm dominating. Not because I got dramatically better overnight, but because years of small improvements finally compounded into dominance. Months of grinding with minimal revenue, then suddenly explosive growth. Not because I did something dramatically different, but because the foundation I'd been building finally supported scale. Wealth, years of making and investing money with slow growth, then suddenly geometric returns, not because the strategy changed, but because compound interest finally kicked in. The pattern is always the same. Invisible accumulation, plateau, period, breakthrough, exponential growth. But you only get to the exponential growth phase if you survive the plateau period. And most people don't. Because the plateau period is uncomfortable, it requires faith that something is happening even when you can't see it. Let me give you a concrete example. When I was building one of my first successful businesses, there was a period where I was creating content, building systems, developing products, and seeing almost no sales. Every day, I'd put in hours of work, and every day, I'd check the numbers and see basically nothing. It felt like nothing was happening, like I was wasting my time. But here's what was actually happening, invisibly. My skills were improving. Each piece of content I created made me better at creating content. Each system I built taught me how to build systems. Each product I developed gave me experience in product development. My audience was growing, slowly, invisibly. A few people here, a few people there, not enough to feel significant. But accumulating, my reputation was building. People were starting to see me as someone who showed up consistently, someone who produced quality, someone who might be worth paying attention to. My knowledge was compounding. Each day of work taught me something, and that something built on what I learned yesterday, and that built on what I learned last week. None of this was visible in the sales numbers, but all of it was real. And then, one day, everything clicked. The skills were good enough, the audience was big enough, the reputation was strong enough, the knowledge was deep enough, and sales exploded. Not because of one thing I did that day, but because of 10,000 things I'd done over the previous months finally reaching critical mass. The breakthrough didn't create the success. The invisible accumulation created the success. The breakthrough just made it visible. This is what you need to understand. You're not failing during the plateau period. You're loading. Like a video game loading screen. It looks like nothing's happening, but behind the scenes, everything is loading. Data is processing. The next level is being built. And when it's done loading, boom, the next level appears. Instantly, like it came out of nowhere. But it didn't come out of nowhere. It was loading the whole time. You just couldn't see it. That's what the process is. That's what trusting the process means. It means understanding that results lag behind effort, that accumulation is often invisible. That compound growth looks like nothing is happening until suddenly everything is happening. And it means staying committed during the loading screen, not quitting because you can't see the next level yet. Trusting that it's being built even though you can't see it. Most people can't do this. They need constant feedback. They need to see progress immediately. They need external validation that they're on the right track. And when they don't get it, they quit. They quit during the loading screen, right before the next level. And they never know what they missed. And then one day, everything changed. I can't even point to the specific moment. There wasn't one dramatic event. It was more like one day I woke up and realized my life was completely different. The businesses that had been struggling were suddenly working. The income that had been trickling was suddenly flowing. The reputation that had been building invisibly was suddenly visible. People who'd ignored me for years were suddenly paying attention. Opportunities that had been closed were suddenly open. Results that had been delayed were suddenly arriving. It felt like overnight success, but it wasn't. It was years of invisible accumulation finally becoming visible. And here's what was wild. I hadn't changed what I was doing. I was doing the same things I've been doing for years. The same daily process, the same disciplines, the same work. But now those same actions were producing exponentially different results. Why? Because of compound growth. The skills I'd been building were now good enough to be exceptional. The audience I'd been growing was now big enough to be influential. The knowledge I'd been accumulating was now deep enough to be valuable. It was like hitting a tipping point. Suddenly, everything was easier. Opportunities came faster. Money came easier. Success was no longer a struggle, it was momentum. And everyone looking from the outside thought I got lucky, thought I had an overnight success, thought I suddenly figured out the secret. But I didn't get lucky. I didn't have overnight success. I didn't suddenly figure anything out. I just trusted the process long enough for the compound effect to kick in. That's the secret. There is no secret, just time, consistency, and compound growth. I remember the first time I checked my bank account and saw real money. Money that changed my life. Money that proved everything I'd been doing was working. I didn't jump up and down. I didn't celebrate. I just sat there looking at the number and thought, so it was real. The process was real. All those years of doubt, all those nights of wondering if I was delusional, all those moments of almost quitting, they were all answered in that moment. I wasn't delusional. I was just early. I wasn't wasting my time. I was investing it. The process was real. The compound effect was real. The invisible accumulation was real. I just had to trust it long enough to see it. And that's what most people never do. They don't trust it long enough. They quit in month 3 when they needed to stay until month 12. They quit in year 2 when they needed to stay until year 5. They quit right before the breakthrough, right before everything they built in the dark comes into the light. I had friends who started around the same time I did, same industries, similar goals, comparable talent. They quit. I didn't. That's the only difference. Not intelligence, not connections, not luck, just persistence through the invisible accumulation phase. And now, years later, they're working jobs they don't love, living lives they didn't choose, regretting that they didn't stick with it. While I'm living exactly the life I designed, not because I'm special, but because I trusted the process when it looked like nothing was working. Here's what I learned from the breakthrough. It always comes later than you want and faster than you expect. Meaning, you'll want it to happen in month 3. It won't. You'll get frustrated. You'll doubt. You'll almost quit. But if you stay, if you keep going, if you trust the process, eventually it happens. And when it does, it happens fast, exponentially fast. One day you're struggling. The next day, everything you built in the darkness comes into the light. And suddenly, you're living a completely different life. That's what the breakthrough feels like. Not gradual improvement, sudden transformation. But that sudden transformation was years in the making. It just looked sudden from the outside. From my perspective, inside the process, I could see how every day of invisible work led to this moment, how every small action compounded, how every day of trusting the process built the foundation for this breakthrough. The breakthrough didn't create the success. The process created the success. The breakthrough just made it visible. Now, let me break down the philosophy behind all of this, because understanding why the process works is what gives you the faith to stay committed when nothing's happening. First principle, trust versus hope. Hope is passive. I hope this works out. Hope is wishing. Hope is praying. Hope is leaving your results to chance. Trust is active. I trust that if I do these specific actions consistently over time, I will get these specific results. Trust is based on pattern recognition. It's based on understanding how things work. It's based on evidence, even if that evidence is from other people's lives, not your own yet. When I say trust the process, I don't mean hope everything works out. I mean trust that specific actions lead to specific results, even if those results are delayed. I trust that if I train consistently, my body will improve. That's not hope, that's biology. That's how the human body works. I trust that if I study consistently, my knowledge will increase. That's not hope, that's neuroscience. That's how learning works. I trust that if I build valuable things consistently, people will eventually pay for it. That's not hope, that's economics. That's how markets work. Trust is based on understanding the mechanism. Hope is based on wishful thinking. So when I was grinding through the dark period, I wasn't hoping I'd succeed. I was trusting that the mechanisms I understood would eventually produce results. That's completely different psychologically. Hope is fragile, trust is resilient. Second principle, faith without work is delusion. Some people misunderstand trust the process to mean just believe and everything will work out. No, that's delusion. Trust the process means do the work consistently even when you don't see results, trusting that the work is accumulating toward future results. The work is non-negotiable. Trust doesn't replace work. Trust sustains you through the work when results aren't visible yet. I see people who say they're trusting the process, but they're not actually doing the process. They're just hoping. They're just waiting. They're just believing things will magically improve. That's not trusting the process. That's avoiding the process. The process is work. Daily, consistent, disciplined work. Trust is just the mindset that keeps you doing that work when you can't see the payoff yet. Third principle, input metrics versus output metrics. This is critical. Most people measure the wrong things. They measure output, money earned, followers gained, weight lost, deals closed. But outputs are lagging indicators. They show up late. They're the result of inputs that happened weeks or months ago. If you only measure outputs, you'll get discouraged because you'll do the work today and not see results today. And your brain will tell you it's not working. Instead, measure inputs, hours worked, reps completed, content created, calls made. Inputs are leading indicators. They're what you control. They're what produce the outputs later. When I was building businesses with no revenue, I stopped checking revenue daily. That was an output I couldn't control in the short term. Instead, I measured inputs. Did I work 8 hours today? Did I create the content? Did I reach out to the prospects? Did I improve the system? If I hit my input goals, I trusted that output goals would eventually follow, and they did. This mindset shift is everything. Stop obsessing over results you can't control. Start obsessing over actions you can control. Trust that the actions will produce the results over time. Fourth principle, process over goals. Goals are important. They give you direction, but goals can also destroy your patience. If your goal is to make $1 million and you're at zero, you'll feel like a failure every day until you hit that goal. That's years of feeling like you're failing. But if your process is to work 10 hours a day on valuable activities, you can feel successful every single day. Because every day you execute the process, you're winning. Goals are destinations. Process is the vehicle. You need both, but the process is what gets you there. I stopped setting deadlines on my goals. I stopped saying I'll be a millionaire by 25 or whatever, because when I missed those deadlines, it demoralized me. Instead, I committed to processes. I will work this many hours every day. I will train this many times per week. I will create this much content. I will learn these things. And I trusted that if I executed those processes consistently, the goals would be achieved. Maybe not on my preferred timeline, but eventually, this removed the pressure of deadlines while maintaining the discipline of daily action. Fifth principle, detachment from timeline while maintaining urgency. This is the balance nobody talks about. You need to be detached from when the results show up, because that's out of your control. Results arrive on their own timeline, not yours. But you also need to be urgent about your daily execution. You can't be lazy today just because results aren't expected for months. Detached from outcome, urgent about action. That's the mindset. I don't know when the breakthrough will happen, but I'm going to work like it's happening tomorrow. This is stoicism applied to modern life. Control what you can control, accept what you can't control, but never confuse acceptance with passivity. I accept that results are delayed. I don't accept laziness in my execution. This philosophy, trust, work, input metrics, process over goals, detachment with urgency, this is what sustained me through the dark years. This is what kept me going when logic said quit. This is what separated me from everyone else who started but didn't finish. Understanding these principles doesn't just help you succeed. It helps you stay sane during the process. It helps you avoid the emotional roller coaster of hope and despair. You just work. You trust the mechanism. You measure what you control. You detach from the timeline. You stay urgent about daily execution. And you let the compound effect do its thing. All right? Enough philosophy. Let's get practical. How do you actually trust the process day to day? How do you implement this in your real life right now? Step 1, define your process clearly. You can't trust a process you haven't defined. Most people are vague about what they're actually doing. I'm working on my business. That's not a process, that's an activity. A process is specific. Every day, I will spend 2 hours creating content, 2 hours on outreach, 2 hours improving the product, and 2 hours learning from people ahead of me. That's a process. It's measurable, it's repeatable, it's clear. Define exactly what you're gonna do every day. Not what you're gonna accomplish, what you're gonna do. The doing is what you control. The accomplishing is what follows. Step 2, build systems, not motivation. Motivation is unreliable. You won't feel motivated every day. If you rely on motivation, you'll be inconsistent. Systems are reliable. A system doesn't care how you feel, it's just what you do. My system: wake up at 5 a.m., train immediately, work from 8 to 6, train again, study, reflect, sleep. That's not a motivation-dependent system. That's just what happens every day, whether I feel like it or not. Build systems that don't require you to feel a certain way. Systems that are so ingrained in your routine that not doing them feels weird. Step 3, track your inputs religiously. Get a notebook, get a spreadsheet, get a tracking app. I don't care what you use, but track your daily inputs. Did you do the work today? Yes or no? That's it. Simple tracking, but it's powerful. Because on the days when you can't see results, you can look at your tracking and see evidence that you're doing the work. That's proof. That's what keeps doubt from creeping in. I have records going back years, days where I trained, days where I worked, days where I executed the process. And when I doubted whether this was working, I'd look at those records and think, I've done the work for 500 days straight. The results are coming. They have to be. That tangible evidence of your process is psychological armor against doubt. Step 4, create artificial milestones. Since results are delayed, you need milestones that aren't result dependent. Don't measure made $10,000. Measure worked 100 days straight. Don't measure got 10,000 followers. Measure created 100 pieces of content. Don't measure lost 30 pounds. Measure train 90 days in a row. These are milestones you can hit regardless of external results, and hitting them gives you momentum and confidence. I celebrated input milestones. I just completed 365 days of training without missing a day. That's an achievement. That's proof of discipline. That's worth celebrating. And those input milestones predicted the output milestones that came later. Step 5, surround yourself with people on the same path. This is critical. You cannot maintain trust in the process if you're surrounded by people who don't understand the process. Your environment will either support your patience or destroy it. If everyone around you is comfortable, living paycheck to paycheck, not building anything, they will pressure you to conform. They will make you feel crazy for grinding. But if you're around other people who are also trusting the process, who are also grinding through the invisible accumulation phase, they'll normalize it. They'll validate it. They'll sustain your faith. I intentionally changed my social circle during my grinding years. I distanced myself from comfortable people and got closer to ambitious people. Not because I stopped caring about the comfortable people, but because I needed an environment that supported my process, not questioned it. Step 6, learn to sit with discomfort. The process is uncomfortable, the not knowing, the delayed gratification, the faith required. Most people can't handle discomfort. They need comfort. They need certainty. They need immediate rewards. You need to develop the capacity to be uncomfortable for extended periods. This is why I recommend physical training. It teaches you to be uncomfortable. It teaches you that discomfort is temporary and manageable. When you can sit in an ice bath for 5 minutes, when you can push through the last set, when your muscles are screaming, when you can run, when your lungs are burning, you develop the psychological capacity to trust a process that's uncomfortable. Physical discomfort tolerance translates to psychological discomfort tolerance. Step 7, know when to pivot versus when to persevere. This is the hard one, because trusting the process doesn't mean being stupid. If you're doing the same thing for years and seeing zero evidence of progress, not delayed progress, but zero progress, you might need to pivot. The question is the process fundamentally sound but just taking time? Or is the process flawed and no amount of time will fix it? Here's how I distinguish. Are you developing skills? Even if you're not making money, are you getting better? If yes, persevere. Are you seeing any positive indicators, even small ones? A few customers, some positive feedback, signs of traction? If yes, persevere. Are you making the same mistakes repeatedly without learning? If yes, pivot. Is the market telling you clearly that what you're offering isn't wanted? If yes, pivot. Trusting the process means being patient with time. It doesn't mean being stubborn about strategy. I pivoted multiple times, different business models, different approaches, different tactics, but I never quit on the fundamental process of daily disciplined work toward building something valuable. The specifics changed, the commitment didn't. Step 8, reframe the waiting period. Stop thinking of it as waiting for results. Start thinking of it as building capacity. Every day you're not seeing results, you're building the capacity to handle the results when they come. If money came before I was ready, I would have lost it. I needed those years to develop financial discipline. If success came before I was ready, I would have sabotaged it. I needed those years to develop emotional control. The invisible accumulation phase isn't just building your external success. It's building your internal capacity to sustain that success. So you're not waiting, you're preparing. You're becoming the person who can handle what you're building toward. That reframe changes everything. Now, the delay isn't frustrating, it's necessary. So here we are, 45 minutes of brutal truth about trusting the process. I've told you about my dark period. I've explained the invisible accumulation. I've given you the philosophy and the practical application. Now comes the only question that matters. Are you actually going to do this? Because here's the reality that most people refuse to accept. Trusting the process is hard. Harder than almost anything else you'll do. It's harder than working hard for a day. It's harder than being motivated for a week. It's harder than being disciplined for a month. It's working hard, staying motivated, and being disciplined for years. With no guarantee, with no visible progress, with everyone around you questioning your decisions. Most people can't do it. They want the results without the process. They want the breakthrough without the dark period. They want the compound effect without the compounding time. And that's why most people fail. Not because they're not capable, but because they're not patient. They quit in month 3 when the breakthrough was scheduled for month 12. They quit in year 2 when success was waiting in year 5. They quit right before everything they built in the darkness was about to come into the light. And then they look at people like me and think we got lucky. They think we had advantages they didn't have. They think we knew secrets they don't know. We didn't get lucky. We just didn't quit. That's the secret. The only secret. Don't quit during the invisible accumulation phase. Do the work when you don't see results. Stay disciplined when you don't see progress. Trust the mechanism when you don't see evidence. And one day, maybe not the day you want, but eventually everything will click. The years of invisible work will become visible success. The compound effect will kick in. The breakthrough will arrive, but only if you stay long enough to experience it. So here's my challenge to you. Pick one thing, one process, one daily discipline that you know intellectually will produce results over time. Maybe it's training. Maybe it's building a business. Maybe it's creating content. Maybe it's developing a skill. Pick one thing, define the process, and commit to it for 90 days. Not 90 days of hoping for results. 90 days of executing the process with zero expectation of visible results. Just trust that the work is accumulating, that skills are compounding, that foundation is being built. Even if you can't see it, 90 days. Can you do that? Can you work for 90 days without needing external validation, without checking for results every day, without quitting when you don't see immediate progress? Most people can't. Most people need feedback faster than that. Most people need to see evidence that it's working or they lose faith. But you're not most people. If you were, you wouldn't have watched this for 45 minutes. You're someone who's capable of more, someone who's willing to do what others won't, someone who understands that real success requires real patience. So prove it. 90 days. Execute the process daily, track your inputs, ignore your outputs, trust the mechanism, and after 90 days, assess not whether you got the results you wanted, but whether you executed the process consistently. If you did, you're building something real, even if you can't see it yet. Keep going. If you didn't, you've learned something about yourself. You've learned that you're not ready yet, that you need to build more discipline before you can trust a longer process. Either way, you've gained valuable information. But here's what I know. If you can execute a process for 90 days without immediate results, you can do it for a year. And if you can do it for a year, you can do it for 5 years. And if you can do it for 5 years, you'll be living a life that most people only dream about. Because 5 years of consistent daily action, compounding over time, will put you in the top 1% of whatever field you're in. 5 years. Most people won't give it 5 months. Most people won't even give it 5 weeks. They want it now. They want it fast. They want the hack, the shortcut, the secret. There is no hack. There is no shortcut. The secret is that there's no secret. Just work, time, trust, compound growth. That's it. That's everything. The process is simple. It's just not easy. Simple. Do the work every day. Trust it's accumulating. Wait for the compound effect. Not easy. Do the work when you don't want to. Trust when you can't see evidence. Wait when everyone's telling you to quit. Simple, but not easy. That's the process. And the question is, are you willing to do what's simple but not easy? Are you willing to work in the dark, trusting that eventually there will be light? Are you willing to build in silence, trusting that eventually your results will speak? Are you willing to suffer through the invisible accumulation phase, trusting that eventually the breakthrough will come? Most people aren't. Most people choose comfort over commitment, immediate gratification over delayed success, the appearance of progress over actual progress. And that's fine. That's their choice. But it's also why they'll never have what you're going to have, why they'll never become what you're going to become, why they'll never build what you're going to build. Because you're different. You understand that the process is the price. That patience is the prerequisite. That trust is the requirement. So trust the process. Not because it feels good. Not because you see immediate results. Not because anyone's validating you. Trust it because you understand how compound growth works. Trust it because you know that consistent action over time produces exponential results. Trust it because you've seen the pattern in everyone who's succeeded before you. And trust it because you know that 5 years from now, you'll either be grateful you started today or you'll wish you had. The choice is yours. It's always been yours. But make it now. Make it today. Because every day you wait is another day the compound effect isn't working for you. Start the process. Trust the process. Become the process. And I promise you, eventually, the process will deliver. Not on your timeline, but on its timeline. And when it does, when everything you built in the darkness finally comes into the light, when years of invisible work become visible success, you'll understand why the wait was necessary. You'll understand why the dark period was actually the most important. You'll understand why trusting the process when you couldn't see the results was the most valuable skill you ever developed. Because that's what separates winners from everyone else. Winners trust the process when losers quit. Winners work in the dark when losers need the spotlight. Winners build for years when losers need results in weeks. Be a winner. Trust the process. Starting now,